Yeah, the tech team.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah,
Yes.
the moderator is not able to join with those details. So what can be done?
Can you repeat, please?
The moderator is not able to join with those details, meeting details. So is there any meeting ID, not the ID, the password, if you can have, can you please give that? Because it's not taking anywhere, that link which is there, it's not taking anywhere.
They haven't passcode in this session, so they can join directly the Zoom link just by clicking the link.
Yeah, actually, he's doing that. He's trying to do that, but he's not able to get in. So, can you tell him to tell you what's it's showing when you click on the link? Yeah, he's asking him. He's asking him to sign in. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not directly getting logged in. And okay. So in sign in, they just want. They must just put the email address and choose any password. But any password, I mean, any password will do? Yeah. Okay. I think so, yeah. Okay. So let me just ask him to do that. Okay. Yeah. Pallavi? Hello, Pallavi?
Yeah, hi, Prajakta.
Yeah, are you in the office? I mean, with Mr. Mahesh?
No. Actually, no, Prajakta.
Okay, because he's not able to join in. So I was just wondering.
Give me a second. Let me just see like what is the.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. There is a little technical hitch, but we'll be starting in 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah. Mr. Mahesh, should we start?
Yeah, we are just waiting for the director NIUA to connect. Probably you can give an overview of the session, and maybe he will join us shortly for the introduction.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So hello, everyone. I'm architect Prajakta Dalal Kulkarni from Department of Environmental Architecture and Planning from BNCA. And on behalf of this regional curator team, I would like to welcome you all for this workshop on Climate Smart Cities Framework, Assessment Framework. And this workshop will basically demonstrate the dashboard and data collection methodology for Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework. And it will also bring city officials and practitioners to discuss some of these climate interventions implemented in various cities, their on-ground inputs, challenges faced, various action-oriented strategies implemented, etc. So I think without any further delay, I think I would like to introduce our moderator. So I would like to introduce Dr. Uma Maheshwaran Rajasekaran, and he's a strategic advisor to Smart City Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and NIUA India. He has over 18 years of experience in developing risk reduction strategies, climate change analysis, institutional strengthening for the governments, NGOs, and multilateral agencies. He has been a team leader and project manager for some of the pioneering climate resilience efforts in India, including establishments of Climate Center for Cities, which is CQ, with the support from Government of India, implementation of urban early warning systems, disease surveillance system, and city resilience strategies. His work has been published as a peer-reviewed journal articles, technical reports, and has been presented at various international and national forums. So his recent work is targeted towards building climate action across Indian cities, benefiting over 150 million people. So we welcome you, sir, and I hand over the stage to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prajakta, and a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants from across the world who will be attending this particular session. Today, we have with us a very interesting group of panelists who have implemented innovative climate actions on the ground across Indian cities, and they have huge experience to share with you all to learn from, so that we can look in terms of scaling climate actions, not only within within Indian cities, but also within the region. We also have with us, we are waiting for Mr. Hitesh Vaidya, who is the Director for National Institute of Urban Affairs, who will be providing us with an inaugural address. While he is joining, let me provide a brief introduction of our speakers today. Mr. Hitesh Vaidya has more than 20 years of urban development policy project formulation implementation experience, ranging from UN, World Bank, and USAID. And he has currently been taken up the position of director at National Institute of Urban Affairs. And prior to this, he was the India country representative for UN Habitat. And he has been immensely involved in supporting an ecosystem to design and roll out urban flagship missions, including the smart city missions in India. We also have with us Dr. Sanjay Kolte, who is the CEO of Pune Smart City Development Corporation. Dr. Kolte, who is part of the Pune Smart City Development Corporation Limited, is a 2010 batch IAS Indian Administrative Service Officer of Maharashtra cadre. And he has been holding the position since September 2020. And prior to this assignment, he was CEO at Osmanabad Zilla Parishad and Commissioner Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Maharashtra. We also have with us Mr. Kamlesh Yagnik, who has over 3 decades of experience in the areas of energy, climate change, and technology. He's been working as the City Resilience Officer of Surat, and he's also the founder trustee of Surat Climate Change Trust. He's the acting chairman of Resilience Startup, which is a research and action forum and a non-profit company working for building resilience of habitats. We also have with us Mr. Vishal Kundra. He's the lead AP and he's the technical director and head of design planning and economics at AECOM India. And Mr. Vishal has worked globally in leading design and managing urban transformation projects over the last 2 decades. And he creates people-centric communities using innovative technology. And within his current practice, as an urban development specialist and a lead design planning and economist at AECOM, he brings multidisciplinary experience in strategic and inclusive planning, project management, and community, city, regional scale. Without further ado, I think Dr. Kolte, it will be great for you to take us through what Pune has been doing within the Smart City mission in terms of innovativeness, but also in terms of technology and data, which has scaled up much in the recent past. And also with the pandemic, I think Pune City was at the forefront of using technology to cater to the services of its citizens. Dr. Kolte, please, over to you.
Yeah, lovely good morning to all. I'll just share my screen. Yes, Pune Smart City Development Corporation has been in the forefront for adopting various state-of-the-art technologies and business model in order to serve its citizens. We have implemented various climate actions in the last 5 to 6 years, and I'll be just precisely going through these climate actions implemented by Pune Smart City. Smart street lighting was our first major project. A smart elements project has also been implemented in the city, wherein environmental sensors and flood sensors have been installed. Then e-bus project has been implemented in the city. E-rickshaw project has been implemented on pilot basis in Pune city. Smart urban forest and smart urban forest is we are planning to initiate. It is still in the planning stage. A smart solar rooftop pilot has been completed and will be scaling it up. And promotion of non-motorized transport has been taken up by various initiatives we are implementing in the city. Smart Street Light is the major project, and it is one of its first kind, and it was the biggest smart street light project in India on PPP mode. It was initiated in 2018. LED efficient technology is the highlight of this project, and saving of energy to the extent of 60% for the total consumption of the city for street lights has been achieved by way of this project. Pune City has a commitment to maintain 51% saving through energy and maintenance cost. So this project is helping us to achieve that commitment. The traditional 93,370 street lights of sodium vapor or mercury vapor were replaced with highly energy efficient LED lights. And all these street lights are centrally controlled through SCADA, and which has been integrated with the ICCC of Pune Smart City. This has provided safe and smooth.
I'm sorry, your slides are not moving. Can you?
Okay. I'm in slide number 3 rather, Smart Streets project, Street Lights project. Is it visible?
Can you reconnect? Can you reshare the screen? So that
okay, yeah, sure. Is it visible now?
No, I think you need to share it again. It was visible for a brief moment and then we lost your screen.
Okay. Now?
Yes.
This was a slide, right?
I think in the full mode, it is not moving. So if you could just keep it in the normal mode, not in the screen share mode. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Please.
Is this visible?
This is visible.
Okay. Yeah. So in all, 93,370 sodium vapor and mercury vapor lamps were replaced by smart LED efficient lights. And the advantages were safe and smooth travel during night, then 24/7 assistance to the citizens through a mobile app and toll-free number for any complaint regarding street lights. I'll just go to our second project, that is the Smart Elements project. This has been implemented through integration with ICCC, and amongst the 720 elements which we have installed in the city, 50 environmental sensors and 50 flood sensors have been installed. And these are collecting real-time data regarding pollution, temperature, level of various gases, noise, etc. These are the parameters which are available for citizens and local administration: temperature, humidity, ambient light, noise, CO2, NO2, NOx, SO2. And through flood sensors, we get the dynamic water levels and alert levels during rainy seasons. The third major project is the e-buses project, where Pune Smart City has given financial support in the form of subsidy for procurement of these e-buses. And Pune Mahanagar Parivahan Mahamandal Limited, PMPML, is another SPV which is implementing this project. And PMC has provided sites for charging stations. We have procured 150 e-buses which are plying in the city. Some of them are 9 meters and some are 12 meters buses. And prevention of air pollution, noise pollution, and saving on energy were the major objectives behind implementation of this project. There will be upscaling of charging infrastructure by way of installing the facility at 15 bus depot, which PMPM will be doing. Energy efficient and city infrastructure has been created with less energy consumption. Improvement in efficiency of public transport has been achieved, thereby a lot of satisfaction among the citizens about this project. Reduction in fossil fuel consumption is there. Almost 1.5 lakh liters of diesel fossil fuel has been saved in the first year itself. There is a reduction in the additional burden on cities exchequer by implementation of this project on GCC model, gross cost contract model, and there is no increased cost on the citizens also. And there is a reduced cases of breakdown. Efficient maintenance of the buses has been achieved by this project. E-rickshaw project was implemented. It's a project envisaged on PPP mode, and the pilot of this project has been taken, had already been implemented in the city. And e-rickshaws were mainly, the service was initiated to provide the last mile connectivity for the citizens. It is feeding into public transport mode of city bus and upcoming metro for Pune city. The current pain points which the citizens are normally facing regarding last mile connectivity will be to a great extent mitigated by this initiative. It's a hassle-free last mile connectivity also. Thereby, we will be achieving the green sustainable transport objective, which has been which has been envisaged in the mission. About 60 e-rickshaws in the pilot mode were deployed in Pune city. smart urban forest project. Through this, we are in Pune Smart City, we are intending to create a sustainable climate ecosystem in the city by creating green refuge for citizens. We intend to create certain spaces, develop certain spaces in the city, which will be from the point of view of forest conservation and sequestering the carbon footprints and to mitigate the adverse climate changes. This project has been envisaged. We will be thereby augmenting the green cover in the non-forest areas, especially in the urban areas, and we'll also be integrating with this the ICT framework of the smart city and the road asset management system, which we have already installed, and it is in place being utilized by the Pune Municipal Corporation. The advantages of this will be there will be reduction in the energy consumption as because of the green cover. There will be cooling of buildings, so reduced consumption, and also ultimately saving of energy. Smart solar rooftop project was also implemented in PPP mode, and we had implemented it in Savitribai Phule Pune University. And this is one of the projects wherein the smart city or Pune city has planned to achieve 15 to 20% saving of energy overall in the city by way of non-conventional or renewable energy sources. So as a part of that, this project was initiated, and the ultimate aim is to create a 1 gigawatt city. So the solar rooftops were installed in Pune University, and the ultimate achievement was to generate up to 10% of the total monthly demand of their premises through these solar rooftops, and it will be further scaled up with the help of Pune Municipal Corporation and jointly with the smart city. Non-motorized transport is on the cards, and several initiatives right from beginning have been implemented. Pune Municipal Corporation has created a cycle plan right from 2017, and while implementing the smart street redesign projects in Pune Smart City, we have ensured that 22.5 kilometers of dedicated cycle tracks have been created along the roads, and pollution-free modes of transport are being encouraged thereby. There will be a little bit reduction in the vehicular carbon and pollution emissions. It will also ensure the safety. We are also ensuring safety for use of NMT modes, and it will also thereby promote the Fit India Health Initiative of Government of India. As learning for other smart cities, there are some points which we would like to make. Bringing of the various stakeholders together is very important, and from the point of view of creating awareness about energy generation and reuse of conventional energy or innovative energy solutions, the smart cities can provide a forum or platform for this, thereby to create awareness about energy generation. Then smart street initiatives can be instrumental in improving the streetscape experience of people, thereby providing pedestrian safety and convenience to them by creating dedicated footpaths, cycle tracks, and installing of various street furniture there. Thereby also we can improve the green cover and make the street a focus with street art and placemaking initiatives. Collective blueprinting, so citizen engagement by way of ideation or carrying out ideathons or crowdsourcing of ideas regarding various methods of energy generation based on climate action is one of the learning or takeaway from this. Focusing on NMT with the extensive creation of bicycle tracks and bicycle sharing scheme can be also tried. Emphasis on public transport modes by the extensive bus networks and the upcoming metro is one of the takeaway. We can also, for the future e-governance, we can create a database of various assets that will be supportive for the biodiversity and forest conservations in the city, or making it more green. Implementation of methods like enterprise GIS, which Pune Municipal Corporation has already adopted. Various data of various landmarks and assets can be maintained and used workably in the various climate actions. One mobility card for promoting public transport, or reducing the energy consumption, that can also be very supportive in this. In the end, future plan of action for Pune city, the city e-charging and digital mobility policy is on the cards. It is in pipeline. Focus on NMT has always been there. Development of cycle lanes and tracks. Pan city is going on. Besides the ABD area of Pune Smart City, Pune Municipal Corporation is also implementing these initiatives in the rest of the city, and retrofitting of junctions, and for thereby ensuring safer movement of cycles and other NMT modes is also tried. Emphasis on public transport, extensive bus network and metro, which is upcoming here. In our ultimate aim is to meet the 15 to 20% of city's energy demand through renewable energy, through the solar rooftops or parks or the placemaking, and increasing the urban forest cover to making the city greener. These are the future plans of action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kolte, for taking us through some of the very innovative efforts of Pune Smart City, especially around e-mobility and energy efficiency and urban forest and NMT. While we'll come back to you with few questions, we don't, most of our participants are joining online through live streaming, so we won't have many questions from the participants, but I do have few. We'll come back to you at the end of the presenters. But before that, I would like to welcome Mr. Hitesh Vaidyaji, who's the Director of National Institute of Urban Affairs, to give us his remark on what's happening in India at large and how cities can progress towards innovativeness. So over to you.
Good morning, everyone. My apologies for being late because of we are talking about innovative for cities, and we had a digital problem challenge to get into the annual to the event. So my apologies for being late. I think Dr. Sanjay Kolte has already talked about innovation. So, on behalf of first of all, before I go into this, I think on behalf of NIUA and organizer, I welcome all of you to this dialogue series called Innovate for Cities. I think it's a great discussion point, and I will, a lot of things of Dr. Sanjay Kolte has already talked about the innovation cities are doing. We have on the panel Pune, which Dr. Sanjay Kolte talked about. We have Surat and we have Tirupati talking about how cities are innovating. And I think it's a great platform to start discussion on this. And I will just come to the three broad points, and then maybe we can take the discussion forward. The first point I will say that after the COVID and last 2 years, only one sentence which is across the webinars and seminars we are hearing is we need to move away from this approach, business as usual approach, to a new approach. And we only area what I particularly feel the learning from the COVID has been that while we were talking about cities as engines of economic growth, now after COVID, we are talking about cities of engines of economic growth, but also with inclusivity and sustainability. So I think two more engines have attached with the cities to run that engine of economic growth. So that's a one area where I think is a big takeaway from the COVID lessons. And second thing which we have talked about, if this business for as usual approach has to be changed, then it has to be, it's not just something will come up and we'll say, no, this was the right approach and this is a new approach will be. It has to be designed, it has to be planned, it has to be discussed, it has to be deliberated. And I think platforms like this are the platform where we need to really think about what we want, how do we want to go about it. What were we doing wrong? I think requires a lot of diagnostic and dissection of our actual way of doing things, and then move away from the new approach. And third thing, which I think Dr. Kolte already talked about, is we need to really invest in human capital. The capacities of our local bodies has to be really thought about. How do we want to go about achieving that? I think these are my three big takeaways, and I definitely see that innovations are widely seen as an important step to meet these challenges of urbanization and climate change. And I don't want to get into the what are the urbanization challenges, because all the people who are on the platform understand it pretty well. What are the challenges, and the promise which innovation is really showing up to tackle this. Right? Also put us, we need to think about it. What is the definition of innovation we really want to talk about? Because innovation is as a big, are we talking about technological innovation? Are we talking about business innovations? Are we doing social innovations? And if these are the innovations which we want to propagate at the urban local bodies, what type of capacities we have to really look at urban local bodies, what type of institution of governance, which we call it ourselves at urban local bodies, really need to look at. I think that's more than the operational issues. It is the structural issues which I think will focus on scaling up and speeding up innovations. And I think we have Vishal and others on the platform. They know and much wiser than me to talk about these issues, and have been championing for quite some time on some of these issues. So I think these needs a bigger consideration on this. We talk about technical solution to challenge. Tackle the challenges. But we also know that a lot of technologies are already there in place. The question is, how do we use these instruments? How do we bring these instruments to the day-to-day operations of urban local bodies? I think Dr. Kolte talked about non-motorized transport, renewable energy, mobility, and cities are already doing things. They don't need more knowledge on it. I think I think he will agree with me if I say that they need more hand on how do you really bring more funding and scaling up of these innovations, what they are doing as a part of thing. How do they need to look at wider market for this scaling up from the private sector of view? How do you really bring the adequate skill sets to really work on this innovation? I think these are the main challenges which cities have to face, and I think all the cities are tackling. But my as an NIUA, National Institute of Urban Affairs, and calling ourselves as a think tank, I think that's our role to give those kind of standards, those type of tools, those type of templates to the urban local bodies. Unfortunately, I think, we have, and I will not blame anything, the people like think tanks of us has not actually done the job which we should have been doing. We are ending up more of a replacement of the management consultants rather than being a think tank. So I take that criticism of me, but I think if we want to move away from business as usual approach to new approach, the think tanks of us, like us, also has to change. It has to be more inward thinking rather than the outward preaching. And I think that's where we need to really move forward. I like while I was thinking of when we are talking about innovative cities, I just came across the sentence which Honorable Prime Minister has talked about, and I think that really summarizes a lot of work which NIUA is right now with our Center for Climate Change is trying to initiate and move forward and nudge the cities towards climate actions and innovations. And I think what he said was, innovation is not merely a word or event. It is an ongoing process. You can innovate only when you understand the problem and try to find out a solution. We must go to the root of the problem and find out the out-of-box solutions. In the era where knowledge is power, innovation is the driver of growth. And I think that's where the climate, our Center for Climate Change is trying to do. Is it has done a climate assessment framework for 126 cities, and it's the first of its kind assessment. And I think that also talks about the changing role of NIUA, which I was talking about, that we are now being more driver of change rather than being just a pushing the this tank or pulling the tank. We are trying to get into the driver's seat of the tank to really nudge and work with the cities hand in hand and come up with the new solutions and things. And very strangely, and I'll appreciate what Dr. Kolte has said, without much of a thinking at a government level, without much thinking at a discussion on climate change, even though thinking have been on transformation, but climate issues, cities are already doing a lot of innovations. I think Vishal will talk about, Tirupati will talk about, they have already started this journey of innovations. And very, 126 cities, when we were doing this survey, the results were very, very promising. That 35 cities have already started preparing a disaster management plan. 101 cities have already started promoting green building in their work. 19 cities have achieved national air quality standards. 67 cities have initiated water resource assessment. 88 cities have converted streetlights into energy efficient or renewable energy or operating streetlights. So cities are doing. Now the challenge, which is like, if we want to look at this cohort, is not 126 cities. India is 4,400 cities. The challenge with us is, how do you scale up? How do you work on it to really take this innovation? What is happening in Pune, or what is happening in Vizag, and what is happening in Tirupati? Why it remains in Tirupati? Why it remains in Vizag? Why it remains in Pune? Why not Pimpri, or why not other smaller urban local bodies take it up? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a management issue? Is it a technical issue? What is that is stopping us to replicate these good practices across the thing? And I will, my own learning when I was in a World Bank project with the ministry, we wanted, like, instead of creating a best practices, can we replicate best practices? And what we did at that time was, we looked at the best practices which India has submitted to UN Dubai Award. And we looked at last 10 years of best practices. And we identified around 100 best practices, shortlisted them again and again, and we came up with the 15 best practices. And we thought we will go back to these best practices and see what has been happening in these best practices, which can then be replicated with other cities. Out of 15, I don't know, you were surprised, 10 of them did not even know that they were qualified for best practices. They did not have an institutional memory to do that. A lot of people did not have even a documentation to really show what they have done. So my whole discussion and deliberation on this 2 days thing is, how do we scale up? How do we speed up? How do we make it more replicable? And I think that requires how do we build the capacities to absorb this new thinking, to innovate within the urban local bodies need to be really talk about. It is just not a core intellectual capacities of urban local bodies, but we need all the think tanks and all the people who are joined in this workshop to really start thinking about it. Coming and saying that we have done this, but why it is not being scaled up is a challenge which, as of a country, we all need to really think about it. And I'll request all the people like Vishal, and all about what is that they did that can need to be replicated. You did very good. You got a Nobel Prize. Thank you. But how do your Nobel Prize get benefit? 100 cities get benefited from this. I think that's the challenge which we all need to think about. I know that people are there, and I don't want to take much time, but I'll just say that we all talk about sustainable development goals to achieve and other things while looking at a new approach, but all of them calls for a converged effort. All of them calls for more sustainable urban areas through participatory urban planning, accessibility, and we all know about it. But I think the major focus is how do we enhance cooperation? How do we use this science with the language of urban local bodies? Because what science we as intellectual understand, what is a day-to-day operation of cities understand, that need to be decodified. We need to really look at how do you transfer these innovations, how do you disseminate and diffuse these emanations with to the local bodies. I think that's the area where we need to talk about while we're talking about innovate for cities, is how do you speed up and how do you scale up. So with that, I think the next session will be talking about it and discussing on it. But it should not be ending up another Zoom conference, which we have been doing last 2 years, but should lead to a new way of thinking, new way approach, which we all talk about. As I always say, that we don't need cities to look forward. We need a forward-looking cities, and how this innovations becomes a tool towards that forward-looking cities is the challenge which we all have on our hands. And I think it's a high time we call a spade and start saying that these are the areas why we need to really work on structural and operational challenges, which we need to really focus on to move forward. With that, thank you very much for joining us on this workshop, and I look forward to a great deliberations from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for setting the context for our future discussion within this particular forum, especially the key reasons for success and options for scaling up, and also the capacity, skill set, and the funding for sustaining some of these initiatives. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Vishal Kundra, who has been at the forefront and implementing initiatives within the city. Mr. Vishal, over to you. Please also at the end, probably if you can touch upon two of these points, key reasons for the success of your initiative, and also some of the pointers for options for scaling it up across other Indian cities will be helpful. Over to you,
Sure.
Vishal.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity. And so is my screen visible?
Yes, please.
So, yes, I'll be talking about the, mostly in the domain of renewable energy and taking Tirupati, smart city as a case sample. But the presentation does not start or end focusing only on Tirupati. It does, touches upon some of the broader issues, which we face. Specifically, in case of Tirupati, things did not start let's say organically that it's a smart city, let's go ahead and do some solar projects. One of the thing was that there was a lot of movement, there was a lot of talk in terms of what the national goals are. And for example, India's pledged to have 40% of its power generation on non-fuel based. Then even some of the trends, at least in last 1 or 2 years, where India stands at number 3 in Asia, number 4th in the world. One of the largest, power plants is in India. So there was a big movement sort of in that direction. So, that actually sort of became an inspiration for Tirupati to start thinking, in terms of what it can or cannot do. So while this was happening, we were anyways implementing the rooftop solar. At the time, other concepts were not conceived, for simple reason that, there has to be a justification. It was not only a checkbox that, the city has done something. And then, looking at the context in terms of, with the state of Andhra Pradesh, having close to 250 to 300 sunny days in a year, again, a huge potential to tap into, that energy domain. And so, that basically triggered this entire conversation that, can, Tirupati, a city, which is only 27 square kilometers in size, 3.7 lakh population, a small city, look at something, which benefits itself, but at the same time, sort of contributes towards sort of the national agenda, specifically in case of the Paris Agreement. So that's where, this, the idea of conceptualizing something on the lines of renewable energy and sustainability started. And, this number 11 megawatt was not sort of a magic number. It evolved as part of the overall process. And so while, this thing was being done, there were some fundamental challenges. Again, the money is limited under smart cities, so the money had to be spent smartly. So it was not so much about that city X has done, let's say, the biggest land-based solar plant under smart city, so let's double it, to become even bigger. So there were like fundamental challenges, and that's where, I'll emphasize a bit more on the problems. And see, Tirupati sits in a comparatively drier area than many other cities because it's inner land. And the water supply comes, which is close to 37 kilometers apart from the city. And along the way, the 60 MLD water, which is required, is from Kailashgiri Reservoir. The 6 pumping stations, a huge amount of power is required to pump, water from the reservoir to the city. Approximately it consumes about 15 megawatt of energy. Moreover, the 40% of the budget, the municipal corporation budget, which is in the range of around 110 crores, it's basically used for maintenance of the water supply system or paying for the electricity bill. Only for the water supply. So 60% of the electricity bill to maintain or provide the city with the water supply is basically utilized through power bills. And then, there's also a lot of discussion, at least in last 2 years since the inception of the new government, that, Tirupati is currently only 52 wards, and it's moving towards a direction where it will grow in size. So once it grows in size, your power demand goes up. And then again, your bills, goes up, and there is no sort of a revenue model. Then, this reservoir, which is close to 250 acres in terms of size, there's a higher degree of evaporation, and these numbers, 33%, it's been derived through working with the irrigation department, 30%. So these were some of the fundamental challenges, which actually pushed us in a direction that can we do something about it. So, and I will be honest, other concepts in terms of can we look something to improve the water supply system and make it more efficient. But the fundamental thing was the electricity bills. And, because that's something, can be mitigated through a renewable energy project. On one hand, it's cost saving. On the other hand, the city is moving towards, a giant leap towards renewable energy. So that problem definition led us to a direction that let's evaluate. So, multiple buildings, they were studied in terms of its feasibility. Initially started off looking for land. Land was limited, but still we managed to find some. And then, of course, the reservoir itself, was a huge potential to be taken up. So simply put, Tirupati did something. It was very logical, a simple solution that let's explore air, water, and land to maximize the renewable energy. I mean, air is just, sort of symbolic. It's basically means rooftop solar. Water is floating solar plant, and then land, which was, it's about 26 acres, but non-contiguous land, which will not be used for any other purpose. So hence, combine all of these 3 projects became, what we call as a 11 megawatt of, renewable energy project in Tirupati. As I mentioned, so the solution was looked at from the point of view of mitigating, the power bills, at the same time, pushing the city in a direction which aligns with the national mission, as well as, sort of global challenges. Being a small city, even a small contribution in terms of 11 megawatt was seen as a sort of, level of pride, and at least in the city. The biggest thing was, conserving valuable land, which cannot be used, for something else, or ensuring that we don't, we don't acquire land, because land acquisition is a big issue in Indian cities. So, we weren't that ambitious that let's go and build, biggest land base, but, which requires acquisition, and it will never happen. So total cost, for all those 3 projects combined is in the range of, 50 crores. And the payback period is in the range of 4.2 to 6.5 years. These are some details. Rooftop solar. We surveyed around 60-70 buildings, and all of them were not feasible. See here, one conscious effort was that if a contracted load of a building is, for example, 10 kilowatt, then the potential was sought that it should cover for 10 kilowatts. So just to equate, what is the building's contracted load and provided it with the renewable source of energy just to minimize, just to make it null, zero. So that was one thing. Along the way, we also learned that some buildings, all the school buildings, government buildings, they had future plans in terms of vertical expansion. So they was taken out. In some buildings, they were not feasible because, structurally they didn't sound, they didn't seem very safe. And, it mandated, that it should be demolished, a new building should be built. So hence, there's only 31 buildings predominantly in the ABD area, which actually has close to 2,200 panels. The land base is around 26 acres. So, roughly, as you all must know that, thumb rule, 1 megawatt, sort of takes about 4 acres, 4 to 4.5 or 4 to 5 acres of land. So at 26 acres, it's 1 or 2 acres and a little higher because the land is not a perfect rectangle or a square. It's sort of projects in one end, and purely because that was the land which was available within the municipal corporation, and close to 18,000 panels. The floating solar is built on 250 acres is the size of the lake, but the plant covers around 12 acres, 12,000 modules. So in floating solar, it becomes very critical in comparison to land or building, because people can move, they can maintain. So here actually you have to create a system so that people can walk between panels and are able to maintain whenever the maintenance is required. So that is around 2.5 kilometers long maintenance, FRP grading, and then yes, it's all of these projects are grid connected. So whatever power is generated, it goes back to the grid, to the DISCOM, and that's how the system has been put in place. Impact, again, it's a sustainable source, that goes without saying. We all know that. But also, like I said earlier, and I'll keep emphasizing it, for a small city like Tirupati to be able to contribute even in the smallest possible way towards the national goals and, sort of global sustainable development goals, this was a big move, a big jump. In the first year itself, close to 16,000 units were created, around 11 crores, worth of savings, which has come in the first year. In 15 years time frame, that's the life cycle of the plant, which includes both design, implementation, and operation and maintenance. And I'll get to that. O&M is a very critical component. So, close to 198 crores can be saved in the electricity bills. Yes, it reduces carbon footprint, equivalent to around 15.2 tons per year. Impact, again, based upon some global benchmarks, it's equivalent to 9 lakh mature trees. These are big numbers, but it does make a lot of sense. There's a lot of fuel savings because the amount of fuel used to generate similar amount of CO2 is equated in terms of how much it can be saved. Reduction in evaporation losses because it's a fresh water source, at least for the city of Tirupati. So there is, even though it covers only 12 acres, but still, that 12 acres also results into evaporation losses. Another advantage of, floating solar is from the point of view of, improving the ambient temperature, at least for the modules. The cooling effect of the water itself, helps, maybe increase the life cycle. So as a result, if you do the math, 20 crore roughly, is spent on power bills per year. I mean, only for, let's say, pumping and maintenance of the water supply system. So 60% of that cost is offsetted through this 11 megawatt. Yes, there is a potential to make it 100%, but again, it has to be seen how lessons learned, how the data shows up in next couple of years. It's been almost 10 to 11 months since these projects have been implemented. Rooftop solar actually got implemented about 2 years ago, but for other, floating solar, which is 4 megawatt, and land-based, which is 6 megawatt, it's close to 9 to 10 months since the time they have been implemented. So more data needs to be analyzed to see what has been the realistic output, and does it align with the anticipated outcomes. So again, and from a city's perspective, the surplus energy, they want to sell it out to industries. The commissioner actually is very strong and pro in terms of using every a possible scenario where the SPV is able to offset all the investments and create sort of a creates a lot of potential revenue for the SPV in the short term and the long term. So this is one of the means in which they're also thinking that tomorrow, if it expands, doubles, and the surplus can be sold to the industries. And outskirts of the Tirupati, a lot of IT industries, manufacturing, mobile manufacturing, TV manufacturing units are coming up. In conclusion, Mahesh, you mentioned challenges. I've listed 4 of them, but the list can go on and on. One of the biggest challenges is maintenance. When I use the word maintenance, it's not only about cleaning and day-to-day maintenance, because most of the project which is currently happening in the country, there is already an O&M phase where the contractor is maintaining, but they will do it only for a certain period of time. The other challenge, which I have seen is that, India, we are not, yes, there is pollution, there's dust. These are the things which needs a, constant another layer add on towards the maintenance of the solar panels. And there have been instances where, some other clients have reached out to us for sort of renewable energy projects. And I thought, they want us to help them, design or implement. No, they wanted us to design a system to maintain it so that it cleans, wiper system or, sprinkler system. Again, technically how that works is not known, at least in the industry. So again, so that's why I put maintenance as a challenge plus capacity building. Eventually all of these things would be given back to the city. So the capacity building of the, the municipal corporation engineering department, not only from the point of view of running the system, but also from the point of view of, maintaining it. Second one, dependency, yes, things have changed in last maybe 1 to 2 years, but still, at a large scale, India is still dependent on China for the manufacturing of, the solar panels. So here, India's competitiveness, both in terms of, sort of spreading or enhancing or upgrading the renewable energy ecosystem, but at the same time, being competitive in the global market. So I think there's a dependency on imports. And I think that's another challenge, if it can be done. And local products are expensive. So there's definitely imports are cheaper. So there's a lot of work that needs to go in that area. See, e-waste generation and maintenance, that's another area. We are talking about renewable energy. Let's imagine a scenario where whatever we have today, it's 38%, I believe, is the number roughly in terms of renewable energy. Let's assume it's 100% in next 5 years. And 50% of the country's demand is only through renewable energy. So today we are talking about air pollution. Tomorrow we'll be talking about land pollution. Where do you dump these things once it's done? So I think there is no standard policy in terms of e-waste management. So that's another area which needs to be worked in, which cannot be solved at a city level. It needs, sort of more brainstorming. There's a case study which we researched, we found in Japan, where, even if a, solar panel runs out its life cycle, then the battery is used towards street lighting. So, they keep reusing it because the capacity of the battery keeps going down with years. So till that time, it's completely dead, they keep using it. So yes, there are some researches and all those things, but it still needs a lot of work on that, and space intensive. I think there has to be some level of innovation, design in these. Land-based solar is not feasible. It's not viable because it consumes land. How far can you do floating solars? In floating solar also, there is a sort of a challenge in terms of the intensity of rainfall or other components. Technically it has to be seen how these kind of systems sustain to extreme sort of climatic action, because we cannot predict what may happen in future. So has to be some innovation. I mean, can we use design building facades, for example, to generate power? There are some sort of broad ideas, but there needs to be some level of innovation in this aspect as well. In terms of opportunities, I think it's a given. For example, in case of Tirupati, any new building, there are like 4 buildings which have been designed and implemented under smart city. So all of them are provisioned with rooftop solar. Vegetable markets, they are provisioned with rooftop solar. Even the potential to expand, the floating solar, because the way it's designed, it's close to 20-25 meters is left from the edges. That's something which needs to be done. That's what the experts also feel, because of the the water level may go up and down. So that's why you have to keep the floating solar towards the center of the lake or water body. But still, in this case, as I mentioned, it's 12 acres of floating solar. It's 250 acres of, so there is definitely a potential to expand it. See, these images on the right-hand side is from another city, which has done parking lots, street lighting. This is Vizag. So in Vizag, this is the bottom right image is the municipal corporation office. So, earlier all the cars were parked in open, but now, you have solar panels. There's shaded parking, so it benefits everybody at the same time. City is actually generating power to pay off at least some portion of their the municipal corporation electricity bill. Solar street lighting, it was started off as a pilot doing for half a kilometer, and now I think it's gone up to 8 to 10 kilometers. So it's done in phases, and it looks nice. I mean, let's see, from a design standpoint, pedestrian lighting, street lighting should also look nice. And there was 2-3 years ago, there was a challenge in terms of the battery size was so big. People were scared that if you put any solar street lighting in a public place, it might get stolen. So, with these sleek design, because the market has evolved, you cannot steal it unless you take the whole pole, which is not possible. See, from right now we are talking predominantly from a government building, but to push it towards residential and even private developers, I think there could be some sort of incentives, similar to how, at least in the Western world, green buildings were given some sort of an incentive, high FSI or tax benefits. So I think there has to be some level of, thought in that aspect also. Uniform policy, the cities are implementing these under smart cities. The state actually has a different policy. It may vary from state to state, but there is no cohesive uniform policy. It's not a competition between smart cities and the DISCOM. That's another thing you'll probably hear. It's not nobody is taking away the DISCOM's responsibility, but there has to be a sort of a global agreement in terms of the benefits of it and how So I think a uniform policy is also something which is required. And most importantly, the measurable output, the success and the failures need to be shared. These projects, yes, we can call it innovative. They were innovative 2 years ago. Today they are not. So, but still, the success and failure should be measured. I don't think so. Cities should be scared to fail. Unless you try and learn, you will not, know what's right or what's wrong. So, I think here, even in case of Tirupati, we'll see, is the units generated per annum is aligning with what was anticipated. How are the cost saving happening, and how the plant is getting maintained? Does it sustain for 15 years, or does it go beyond that? So all of data needs to be captured, documented, and shared. And I think that would be a big benefit for other cities to take it up and accordingly, learn through the process and accordingly, apply, whatever seems relevant to them. Yeah, that's pretty much from my end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vishal, for taking us through the Solar City project in Tirupati. I think one of the key things which you mentioned at the end, sharing both success and failure is going to be very critical, especially for innovations, because innovations are always the edge of trying out new things, and the chance of failure is quite high. And it's important that we share it before we scale it. And with that, I'll probably come back to you at the end of the next speaker to deliberate more on, some of the key things like stakeholder engagements and also the initial discussions, the reasons for success as of today within Tirupati. I invite Mr. Kamlesh Yagnik, the Chief Resilience Officer of Surat Municipal Corporation, to take us through the innovative approach of establishing urban biodiversity park in Surat. Mr. Yagnik, over to you. Mr. Yagnik, you're on mute. Can you please?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Mahesh. And it's really been a pleasure to hear both Mr. Kolte and Mr. Kundra, a wonderful journey, like taking place in cities of Pune and Tirupati. It's just wonderful. And I'm very happy to be a part of this wonderful initiative, planned by you. Now, what I'll be sharing about Surat's experience with little focus on biodiversity park, which is established, in our journey of transformative journey to enhance climate and urban resilience. Now, just to give you a brief about Surat, we all know that Surat is situated on the western coast of India, and it is a delta city with a, Tapi River passing through in the middle of the river, in the middle of the city. And this city, did show in last, recent past, we, had a plague in 1994, and we had a historic flood in 2006. Now, both these events, it shows, it, brought back the resilient character of this city. And this city, it is India's eighth largest city, diamonds, and it's a, hub for diamond production and synthetic fabric. And we are expected to grow at 9.17% GDP till 35. The major challenges city, face is a per capita infrastructure demand rise, because this, flood is a major challenge. And in last 100 years, we had 25 floods and siloed approach across all the stakeholders. These are some of the challenges. In this context, I will share Surat's resilience journey. Now, what Surat has earned, the current performance of the city, it was the best third consecutive year, we got the best performing city award under Smart City Mission, in one of the largest, world's largest cleanliness survey of over 4,000 cities, we got a second time, we got a cleanest city award. Then yes, in municipal performance index, we are second best this year. Ease of living also, we are fifth in the city. In data maturity, we are in the first. And in climate smart cities, this year, we stood first among all the 126 cities. We also recently got Resilience City Award by UNESCO. These are, some of the details, of Surat City. Now, this year in 25th July 2021, Surat won the first rank in Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework by covering, in different sectors like energy, waste management, water, mobility. And so we are essentially, it is an outcome of a holistic approach, working together. And the best part of Surat, we worked in unison with community. So local government and, people, the community, they work very closely with each other. And that's an outcome, that, we get, after implementing several projects. Now, we all know the assessment framework which was given to us, had essentially, 5 main sectors. And if we talk about urban planning, green cover, and biodiversity, what exactly, it covers are, essentially, the indicators are in sector-wise indicators in energy, in urban planning. If we see that, then rejuvenation and conservation of water bodies and open areas, proportion of green cover, urban diversity, disaster resilience, and city climate action plan. So these 5 indicators which are seen, Surat extensively work in this particular area to get, like a 25% weightage was given to this sector of urban planning and biodiversity. So these are, in this area, we worked essentially. And these are, some of the main challenges, city faces, this kind of challenges starting from flood, because, when we had to do urban planning, we had to consider not only, natural disaster, even man-made disaster, we considered. And, apart from, seeing that flood, then extreme weather events, traffic, urban housing, disease outbreak, threat of terrorism, industrial accidents, earthquake, and economic resilience, because these are, some of the shocks and stresses, which we consider while we were designing our urban planning sector. And all these are so nicely integrated, all the shocks and stresses, that planning, is appropriately done accordingly. Now, city, we call ourselves, this is a journey, it's a resilience journey, both urban resilience and climate resilience. The idea is, each episode of disaster, we are coming out better. 1994, after plague, city came out, much better. Same is the case with 2006. City, came out to such an extent that, that decade, it showed, the highest migratory population growth in whole of Asia. And that's an outcome, which we saw. So that resilience character of the city is seen time and again. And, the various areas, which we considered while we designing our urban planning, the main area, and these areas were identified after lot amount of group discussions, focus group discussions, various interviews, workshops, a lot of things were carried out. And citizens' aspirations were put in a strategy document. And the areas, which we actually identified are mobility, affordable housing, water resilience, economic resilience, environment resilience, social cohesion, and public health. So these are the 7 areas in which a city plan, its total development was planned around these areas. And there are, close to about 21 different goals and 65 various initiatives. And all these initiatives, majority of them are revisited time and again. And some of them, we have started implementations to accrue appropriate benefits. And some of the, resilience measures, which we actually did it by, in falling in various categories, just by maintaining status quo or by prevention of losses, spreading of the losses, inviting micro insurance companies to come. And there are special products designed by insurance companies in this city. Then changing of activities, prevention of development in low-lying coastal area and turning them into an entertainment zone, changing of the locations, and enhance adaptive capacity. So this, various categories were identified while we were designing, various solutions. And some of the resilience measures, which we actually planned and which are implemented or in a process of being implemented are essentially, if you see that to meet our 2041 demand of, 2,300 MLD We are planning a reservoir, end-to-end flood early warning system is in a place. Then pollution abatement and conservation of Tapi River, establishing of river plaza. Then emission trading system, which we set it up. That's a beautiful system which checks the emission. It's for the first time in the world, just like we have a carbon trading, we introduced emission trading in this. Then, development of canal corridor, rainwater harvesting, and this biodiversity park. I will talk about this biodiversity park a little in depth, like in this presentation, using Miyawaiku technique. This is a Japanese technique, wherein multiple varieties of trees are planted to enable appropriate growth. Water bodies restorations, like one of the oldest lake in the city was restored. And not only it was restored, we created an environment zone. And today Gopi Talao is one of the finest. It has become a flagship project of Surat Municipal Corporations and one of the large attractions of community. And so people go there. This is a unbelievable water body restoration program carried out in this city. Community steam generation and cycle for change challenge. So these are some of the measures at a city. We actually did it. This is we are creating additional reservoir for our freshwater supply, creating a barrage which will accrue multiple benefits, hitting multiple birds with a single stone. This particular barrage is designed. Then pollution abatement of our Tapi River. You see this water hyacinth growing because of organic matter. Now we have prevented organic matter to go inside the river, and now we have a cleaner river. And this is an amazing a project currently being implemented at Surat Municipal Corporations, wherein funding has come from both state and central government. And a massive plantation. We are almost 1 lakh trees on the bank of river is put in, which will reduce almost about 2,000 tons of GHG emission will be reduced to this extent. Another project is again we are creating water bodies in all our 8 zones, and all this water bodies, it has a multiple purpose. And it's like a big lake in the middle of river. There are several such lakes are being planned, and Surat Municipal Corporation, they've just budgeted these water plazas in several areas in the city of Surat. And again, rainwater recharging, a massive program is carried out by Surat Municipal Corporations to audit, because it is mandatory for rainwater recharging for any new construction in the city. But they don't work. So audit program was conducted, wherein all the rainwater recharging in several residential complex or commercial complex or industrial complex, they were identified whether they are working or under maintenance or not working at all. And those which were not working, they were asked. And municipal corporations, they plan out with a subsidy program where each corporator can give a subsidy to the units. So this particular program essentially worked well. And this is essentially our biodiversity park project. And the main objective of this particular program is to enhance open public and recreation spaces, to increase green cover, and also to provide a conventional recreational place. And we also talked about inclusive development of health related activities. So this particular project right now, it is in implementation, and corporations we are implementing this particular project. And yeah, it definitely will improve air quality because of plantations, and it will also create a favorable areas for birds and other species to come. And what this particular project involves. This particular project, it involves approximately almost about 3.5 kilometer in length on both the sides of the creek. So it will also act as a creek redevelopment. And it is spread over an area of about 87 hectares. And, it will have various walking trails in the city. Along with that, we have a cycling trails, for almost about 9 kilometer. And there are going to be a native plantation, native trees will be planted of 85 different varieties. They are identified and they are also being, we have started planting them also. And it's going to be an urban forest. It's going to be a lung of the city, and wherein we're going to have almost about 6,000 plantations. 6,000 trees will be planted in the city. It's like one of the very dense forests we are creating to restore our biodiversity. And for the first time, we have asked citizens, of our city, because till date, we never had our biodiversity register. So, people are invited, NGOs, school children, college goers, colleges, all are invited, and they act as a volunteer, and they are contributing their knowledge about flora, fauna, and other living organisms, and asking and supporting Surat city in preparing our first people's biodiversity register. So this is, being prepared currently. And we are expecting, in another 2 years' time, this particular project will be completed, and it will accrue results, the kind of results, we are looking with regard to climate resilience and urban resilience. And this is, like a slide I want to share it, because, like 2006, when we experienced a historic flood, we were driven by reaction. And post 2006, for the first time, like the city decided that, we cannot be reactive, we have to work in a proactive manner. And for the first time, in the city, Surat City Climate Change Trust was formed. And this is essentially an instrument which combines all the stakeholders from various sectors, like starting from municipal corporations, we have elected representatives, industries, industrial associations, NGOs, subject experts, medicos, engineering colleges, they have all come together and set up this trust. And this particular trust, it acts as a think tank to Surat municipal corporations and guiding Surat municipal corporations in various climate and urban resilience. But still, we cannot say that, we have mainstream all urban and climate resilience into, all our sectoral policies and processes. But, we are still, midway, and that's a journey we are traveling. And this is, what we learned, whenever there is a disaster of any kind. So a principle of subsidiarity definitely increases autonomy and resilience. And whenever, a disaster, a community, is on its own, essentially. So idea is, we must build a resilience from both the ends, top down as bottom up. And this is a kind of challenge, we have it. We cannot go on asking for more and more resources from government. And that's what, citizens, we have learned. And that's what, currently we are supporting, or we get involved in the projects set up by Surat municipal corporations. And some of the, way forward, the climate resilient Surat, if we really want it, then, Surat municipal corporations, yes, it is contributing immensely in strengthening institutional and community resilience in the city, by supporting us, in establishing linkages between disaster reductions and adaptations. Then, yes, we have an adaptation agenda to adopt a goal of climate proofing and resilience building. And yes, a holistic approach to manage all shocks and stresses is must. So we are working, at manifold, in order to ensure that disaster is appropriately managed and we do bounce back in case a disaster strikes. And more importantly, what we learned is a convergence of all actions, to manage all our assets. That's very, very important, that we have learned. And we know that as a city, if we have to survive, so we are as strong as its weakest link in the city. So thank you. This is, like in a nutshell, I wanted to present Surat's case before you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mahesh. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kamlesh. I think you have brought about the importance of stakeholder consultation and engagement in the overall process and how Surat went about the holistic thinking. That was also one of the questions from our audience, and you managed to answer that well within your presentation and stressing around the importance. We know we are running short of time, but I have one question to each of the panelists. So probably we can you can try to answer it as briefly as possible so that we can end the session in time. So my first question to Dr. Sanjay Kolte is, of course, there are a lot of initiatives which are happening under your leadership. What do you think are the 3 key reasons for success?
I would say, first of all, it is the planning which has been taken up with the help of all stakeholder participation at the level of preparation of smart city plan by the municipal corporation or at the COPSC DCL level. Here in Pune, a lot of churning or a lot of interaction with various stakeholders and various organizations, leaderships, then educational institutions, research institutions, bodies of architects, engineers, this thinkers had taken place, and that was one of the strength. That is one of the strength, I would say. Then implementation, which is adaptive to the needs of the city. Even during the implementation stage, the needs of the cities and the interactions from the public body of municipal corporation, at the same time various non-officials or the various NGOs and other things, their views or their reactions were also considered even during implementation phase. And then the impact assessment part, stress is always there in Pune because it's a hub, knowledge hub or education hub, and it is very vibrant kind of city, and reactions come very readily on any issue or any activity in the city. So the impact is also given quite importance in any venture or any initiative which has been implemented in the city.
Thank you very much, sir. I think once again stress the importance of stakeholder engagement, which Pune has been leading along with Surat in this regard. So my next question to Mr. Vishal, what is the role of planning institute? This is from the audience. What is the role of planning institutes in building and tackling climate issues within cities? A quick reflection. I know it's a complex question with multiple answers, but what do you think the Planning Institute should do? If you can highlight one key point.
See, one of the critical thing, because that's anyways, the institutes add a lot of value because a lot of research work happens, in the academic world. In the professional area, you actually are mostly aligned with how the innovations are happening in the market. So, if I have to say, think big, dream big, those kind of approaches happens, in the academic world. So I'm presuming that institutes mean, the planning institutes mean academics. So from that perspective, there is a lot of fresh ideas, the freshness towards looking at a problem. Sometimes, we as professionals, we may be missing on something, and those fresh ideas or even challenges or the questions, which are being asked. Some of them are very innocent sort of questions in my experience, dealing with students. So, and those actually force you to think to the same solution in a very different way. So the point being that institutes are a very critical component, one of the critical stakeholder in the overall gamut of things, because institutes are also made up of citizens. So if you're talking about city X, if an institute in city X, the students who are going there are also citizens of that city, or maybe coming from other parts of India. So they actually have sort of an interest and bringing something new to the table. So I think that's where I see the institutes add a value, because they are in a stage in their life or a career where thinking big doesn't stop them, it doesn't harm them, rather it might result into something even better.
Thank you. I just got a message from our session organizer that we can't extend the session much as other people are waiting and there is a live audience going on. But thank you very much to Dr. Sanjay Kolte, Mr. Kamlesh Yagnik, and Mr. Vishal Kundra for taking us through some of the innovative approaches which are getting implemented across Indian cities. Hopefully, we get to hear more and we get to interact with you more, and also go through the resource material and see options for scaling the same across Indian cities and other cities in the region. Thank you. Thank you all for attending.
Okay, thank you.
Prajakta, over to you.
Yes, yeah. Mahesh, should we just show the dashboard quickly, or should we wind this up
I think
directly?
we don't have time, so we can probably
Wind
do
up that way.
Thank you.
Okay, surely, yes. So on behalf of BNCA and regional curator team, I would firstly like to thank all our speaker and panelists, Dr. Sanjay Kolte, Mr. Kamlesh Yagnik, and Mr. Vishal Kundra for being part of this particular workshop and sharing their experiences with us. It was great learning on various practical implementations the city have adopted as climate measures. I also would like to thank Mr. Mahesh Vaidya, Mr. Mahesh, Dr. Mahesh, Vaishnavi, the entire NIOA team for their immense support for organizing this particular workshop. I also would like to thank our BNCA team and our partner institutes. Without their supports, this program wouldn't have been a success. And finally, thank you audiences for joining us. With this, I conclude this particular session. Have a great day, everyone. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.